for ICT issues.
Ideas that have been shared in this summit has provoked new ways of thinking to be able to deploy technology going forward into the future.
This week on Inside Government, I talked to ACTA Chief Executive Officer Stanley Kamangoya on the just concluded Connected Kenya Conference. We look at the resolutions and the way forward. Watch the conversation right here on KBC Channel 1 with me, O'Brien Kimani.
As I tell you truly, oh, I love you. Can we fall in love like we did before? All that we've been through, she's so beautiful and true. She rocks my world. Don't call anymore, 'cause I'm so thinking about you. Have you found somebody new? You'll never find a love like mine, no matter where you go. I'm living a dream, yeah. Oh, pretty me. My face now growing a tree. Oh, pretty me.
Diani is world famous for sun-kissed beaches and exotic resorts. But this place is carving a niche for itself. It is fast becoming a decision-making destination for ICT issues.
Ideas that have been shared in this summit has provoked new ways of thinking to be able to deploy technology going forward into the future.
This week on Inside Government, I talked to ACTA Chief Executive Officer Stanley Kamangoya on the just concluded Connected Kenya Conference. We look at the resolutions and the way forward. Watch the conversation right here on KBC Channel 1 with me, O'Brien Kimani.
Larry?
An employee who has just started working is already Employee of the Year? That's ridiculous. What should we do? Right now, we only have one final chance.
If we lose next month, it means we will lose our jobs? It tastes like the food my mom used to make.
Your mom really loves you, and she wanted to cook dinner for you. That's why she...
Sasa
Dala, hukuniambia mtoto mrembo miti ya malaika jameni. Da, laini mashallah.
nyinyi bado mko pamoja?
Tuliza ni mambo gani? Tuje kwa pamoja.
Namaanisha kama jana.
Wala. Fadlan Maalim. Nipe muda wa kufikiria ndugu yangu.
How high is high and how low is low? That is a question that has evaded Kenya's energy sector for quite a long time. And tonight on The Scorecard, we revisit the question of the cost of electricity in this country. This is coming less than a month since the new prices came into effect as announced by EPRA. We want to look at the pricing mechanisms, the generation mix in this country, and ask ourselves, are there regulatory as well as policy shifts that we need that can lower the costs of energy? You know, this is The Scorecard. We are live from Broadcasting House. My name is O'Brien Kimani.
Indeed, my name is Marie Yambo. Good evening and welcome to the program. And just as O'Brien has said, our panel of experts are in studio to unpack this particular discussion for us. We'd like to hear from you. We'll be able to sample some of your views within this program. Our social media handles at KBC Channel 1 on Twitter and at KBC Channel 1 TV on Facebook.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yes, and of course we need to be going down to those numbers. We need to have a look at what exactly composes the cost of electricity, and you know for sure that there's a number of components. Those are some of the issues that Marie Yambo will be taking us through on the Super War. She has prepared enough numbers to allow you to make proper decisions and for you to understand what exactly goes into your energy bill. This is The Scorecard.
And indeed,
I told you we are live.
Yes, question of the day.
Oh, absolutely, you
Yes.
have it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
What we'd like to get to know how the cost of electricity or the high cost of electricity has actually affected you. So we'll be able to sample some of those views in this particular program. O'Brien?
Definitely, that is our question of the day. How has the cost of energy affected you? And we know for sure that all of us at any point in our lives, we are users of electricity. And that's why the question tonight is, how has the cost of energy affected you? Marie Yambo has given you all the numbers for you to get through to us. We would definitely want to hear from you. And of course, your thoughts on that question get through to us. But Marie Yambo is now on the Super War. She's about to take us through some interesting numbers that you ought to know, so that we exactly see what component goes into what when it comes to the pricing of electricity in this country. Marie Yambo, please take it up.
Thank you so much, O'Brien. Well, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority did actually approve Kenya Power's request for review of electricity tariffs that took effect on April the 1st, 2023. Under the new tariffs, KPLC has classified consumers into 3 categories based on their monthly consumption. And well, just as you can see on our superboard here, the KPLC consumer categories, the first one is low consumers. These are consumers who use up to 30 units per month. The second category, those who consume 30 units but less than 100 units per month. And the third category are consumers who consume more than 100 units per month. Now, the revised cost of power for households. Now, for those who consume about 30 units per month and below, this is how the breakdown is. Now, previously, when you bought electricity token, you are buying it at 21 shillings and 99 cents. But at this point, because of the review of the tariffs, you're buying it at 23 shillings and 6 cents. So, for instance, if you were to spend 500 shillings, previously you would get 22.7 units, but right now you're getting 62.9 units. So that is what you'll be spending in as far as this category is concerned. Now, for those who are consuming 30 to 100 units a month, previously you were buying it at 21 shillings and 99 cents, currently at 26.10 shillings. And previously you would get 45.5 units for 1,000 shillings spent, but right now you're getting it at 38.3 units. Definitely there's an increase over there, and there's a reduction in the number of units that you're receiving. Now, for consumers who are using more than 100 units per month, previously you're buying your tokens or units at 27 shillings and 92 cents per unit. Currently it's at 31 shillings and 75 cents per unit. So, for instance, if you're to spend 2,000 shillings, how much would that be? It will be 71.6 units previously, but right now 62.9 units. Definitely, again, a reduction because of the new tariffs that have been effected. Now, apart from just buying the electricity tokens, there's also other levies that are actually affected in as much as you pay for your electricity bill. So, for instance, if you were to pay for 500 shillings for your token, there are other levies that are actually included. The value-added tax, 16%, that will cost you 61.55 shillings. Fuel energy charge at 134 shillings and 7 cents. Forex energy charge at 27.14 shillings. The EPRA, that's the Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority charge at 0.59 cents. Water Resources Authority will also be charging you at 0.24 cents. Now, Rural Electrification Program will be charging about 12 shillings and 49 cents. So if you spend 500 shillings, from my calculation, this will actually cost you 250 shillings. So essentially, you're actually paying half of that to these levies. So what you're getting actually is at 250 shillings. So this is the breakdown that we have for you today. Hopefully that you'll be able to understand how your money is used when you buy a token of electricity from the Kenya Power Company. Now, O'Brien Kimani is ready with a guest to unpack this particular subject for us. And indeed, we'd like to hear from you. Remember, our question of the day is, how has the cost of electricity affected you? O'Brien?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Marie Yambo, for taking us through those mind-blowing, or if you like it, jaw-dropping numbers. And of course, I know a lot of people have so many questions in regard to the pricing mechanism as employed by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, whose mandate is to regulate the cost of electricity, gas, as well as oil in this country. Well, Marie Yambo has just talked about the team in the studio. She's right, because I'm about to unveil the team. And joining us on the set, our guest tonight is George Aluru. George Aluru is the chairperson of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. It is a lobby group that brings together energy producers in the country. And of course, he is a telecoms as well as an energy engineer. So when it comes to the construction of energy facilities, he has an idea or two. When it comes to pricing mechanisms, he's also an expert in that field. And so he'll be taking us through some of these components. And so the whole point is to ensure that we make good use of George. George, welcome to the show.
Asante sana, Brian.
I hope you're ready with all the information that the world has to offer.
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. And next to George is a regular face on this show. We're talking about Professor Fred Ogola. He's a governance as well as a governance expert and an economist. He's now joining us as well to help us digest this topic. Professor, asante sana for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You don't look energized.
Yes, actually, I was trying to tell George before that he is a producer, so we shall defend him on behalf of the consumers.
Okay, all right. We'll see about that. And of course, Nemi Sheni is also joining us, as usual, completely recharged. Thank you very much, Whitney.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Asante sana. So I just want to pick your thoughts on what Marie Yambo has just taken us through, the various components that goes into the pricing of electricity in this country. George, yes. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think as the breakdown has shown, there's several components that go to the, and this is the consumer price. This is not the price of production. So there's the production price, which more or less speaks to the energy cost that we see as an energy cost, plus a few of the pass-through costs, the forex and the fuel, depending on the technology that is used. And then there's the levies that are used then to support the sector entities that like EPRA, for example, that regulates the sector, or the Water Resources Authority, because we do generate a lot using the water, so hydro. And therefore the regulatory authority related to that specific type of generation collects a certain fee just to manage the water resources, to ensure that we will still have electricity in future out of these water resources. So it's different components, and I think it's a mechanism that is normally set by the regulator, EPRA, and every about 3 years there is supposed to be a review And this is the process that we have just gone through as a country. And then based on the costs at that time, and costs meaning generation cost, and all these other levies and needs, the things that, monies that need to be collected to sustain the entire sector, then a tariff is set. And then there's the thinking around then how do we distribute this amongst the different consumers. So the lifeline consumers, the first slide that you are seeing on 0 to 30, that's lifeline. So those are really vulnerable consumers that we want to protect. So we actually shield them from the full cost. There are about 6 million of them currently. And then there's the 31 to 100 that used to be in the lifeline, but in this new tariff review, have actually been pushed up. Because there was
and so they'll be paying more.
Yes, they will be paying more. Actually, that's the band that experiences the highest increase. Then there's the 100
that
and
is
above.
where majority of us are in this panel.
Yeah, and good point actually, because you must understand that the lifeline tariff is supposed to protect the vulnerable. Would you, in the panel, consider yourselves to be vulnerable?
We don't have anybody here who is vulnerable, but we'll be coming
exactly,
back to
and
that's why. Yes, Prof. What do you make of that explanation by George?
Yeah, first of all, O'Brien, let me first of all put it very clear to Kenyans that before we start crying, let's start knowing what we can celebrate about. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to DRC, you go to Western countries, other countries, by the time we began this show, within 1 hour, when we end, we should have moved from the mains to a generator almost 4 times. So that's the important thing to know. I know we can cry here without knowing what people actually wish to have on the other side. The other thing also we need to know in the scorecard, because the scorecard, there are some things Kenya has scored. Stability about electricity. So we are paying all that money, but there's a benefit that there's more stability. Somebody has been making a joke why Nigerians speak very loudly. People say that because Nigeria, they have generators, so they have to speak louder than the generator so that they can be heard. This is a joke, but it tells a signal when you land in those countries. The other thing also which is important to know is that why is Kenya seen as a tech hub for Africa? In spite of the fact that Nigerians are more aggressive, that Nigerians can come to Kenya and set up some techno businesses. Because of one, Kenya Power, with all the complaints we have, then secondly, broadband technology. So that's why there's a lot of innovation taking place. You see Google, see this place, the place to be, IBM, name them. Those big tech companies find more themselves at home in this country. So that's said and done. We come back now to talk about what George has just said. I think that what is the priority of this country? To enhance manufacturing and industry. So if you push those who consume 100 and above, and you make them pay higher tariff, which means the productivity of the industry, it goes down because of the cost of power. And remember that even those people who are celebrating, they're paying less on power because they talk about the lifeline. The higher the cost of power to the producers, they'll pay for it when they are buying bread, they pay for it when they are buying soap, they'll pay for it another way. So actually there's no escape for anybody here. It's just that you are just shielded in that, but actually you're going to pay more in that. And remember, these people also buy things in Kadogo economy. For example, they buy sugar in sachets, they buy salt in small containers, which are actually used using electricity. So I don't believe that is really a best way to do it, because I'm asking myself, how much is the government saving these people from if the cost borne by these big manufacturing companies that consume high power will be translated to these consumers, which are around 6 million people in the end? I discovered the best thing they could have done, maybe even to cushion these companies to produce so that they can have lower production costs and pass that benefit to these people and let electricity be paid together. But also there's something they're not telling you. That also if you buy this is not stated there, but it's something I know, that if you buy this power in bulk, you tend to be charged more. For example, if you go and buy 4,000 shillings, with 4,000 shillings at a go, you'll find that if you buy with 1,000 4 times, you'll have more units than if you buy 4,000 shillings at a go.
Really?
Yes, they are trying to punish somebody because why they do that is
Is that an argument?
Because you can hold the units.
No, it's not accurate.
It is
No,
not
you can
accurate.
hold the units.
You have been flagged off.
Yes. No, I'm saying you can hold the units by buying too much units from everybody, then you're holding them. They don't want people to buy too much. So
I'll say this, based on experience. I mean, sometimes I'll buy tokens, as we call them here, worth 1,000 bob. I'll get 40, 45. If I buy 2,000 shillings, I'll get 80, I'll get 85. So I don't know whether there is any economic benefits of buying.
No, actually they can, if you go and check properly, and maybe if you just go to check with people of Kenya Power, they would more or less tell you that also depends on how many units are you buying at a go.
Very well.
And also how many units do you have already hoarded in your system.
I can see George is shaking
Maybe
her
George
head,
have to...
But we'll be coming back to that. Let's hear now from Michelle.
Thank you for having me, O'Brien, and also a good evening to your viewers. According to me, this EPRA prices, the review in the tariffs, they're ill-advised. Why? When you look at the comparative analysis, according to Kenya and other countries in the region, that is the East African community, or in the continent, which is Africa, Kenya is the third highest country for the cost of power, meaning we are not competitive globally. When we manufacture...
That's a research by who?
This is empirical. You can check online. We can check online. The data is there that Kenya is the third highest country when it comes to cost of power. It is online. Yes. So it is,
but
it
this
is not
research is by who? Because research is as relevant as the research takers.
Well, it's okay. I will come back. I will come back with the data. But we know that that Kenya is the third highest when it comes to cost of power, meaning that begs the question about our competitiveness in the region, and also our manufacturing sector, and also our industrialization, which we are hoping to get to 20% by Vision 2030, and currently we are at 7.2% from the GDP perspective. And also now, secondly, when we come to the cost of power, we come and ask ourselves, power is a very price-sensitive commodity, meaning when you hike the prices, the aggregate demand is going to go low. When the taxes go higher, the tariffs go higher, people will no longer be using hot showers, people will no longer be using their ovens. People are going to go off-grid. Some people are actually going to start electricity, meaning when the government plans to raise revenue because of increasing the powers of electricity, the cost of power, it might be counterproductive because people are going to escape paying those taxes. Meaning, I do think this is a very ill-advised thing to do by EPRA. Yes.
Very well, and also to put this conversation into context, is the fact that our total energy generation is about 2,900 megawatts. This is actually a leapfrog from about 1,400 in the year 2013. And when you look at the number of people connected to electricity in Kenya, you're talking about almost 80% of the Kenyan population have access to electricity. And when you look at the urban centers, you are looking at almost 100%. Those are major achievements that we have made as a country in the last 10 years. Something else worth noting is that Kenya is the world's 7th largest producer of geothermal energy, and in Africa it is number 1. And our potential capacity is about 10,000 megawatts. Where else do you get this kind of interesting statistics? You know for sure it's nowhere else but right here on Scorecard. We are taking a short break. We'll be back. I'll be finding out from George, is energy cost in Kenya expensive? Stay right here.
every day on selected matches. Make a decision. Mozart Bet.
Haikuwa kuua, ilikuwa pesa.
I was listening to things that were just amusing and like, really? Okay, yes, you say that I gave you money. What money?
You know, when a murder happens in a family, you know, a spouse has died, the obvious automatic suspect is the other spouse.
Jesus said, I am the light of the world. We'll be having segments of testimonies and conversations based on Christian perspective.
Are these perpetrators still alive?
Every time I forgave one, he died.
Everybody wants to spend 5 million for the wedding.
This will also be the home of the latest and the most current best gospel music. This is Angaza Show coming back to you bigger and better.
I shall not want. Oh, my soul's got a shepherd in the valley, and I shall not want.
Indeed, a heated debate going on right here in the studio, and we are still asking you the question of the day. How has the cost of electricity affected you? We'd like to hear from you on social media handles at KBC Channel 1 on Twitter and KBC Channel 1 TV on Facebook. Well, Sony TM, I am Sony on Twitter, says the cost of power keeps going up daily. What's happening? That's the question she's posing there. A high cost of electricity means expensive production of goods. That translates to higher cost of goods, which even makes life harder. That is Pedro Mbugwa. It's Pedro Mbugwa, that is, saying that. Now, at Simeo _001, electricity is getting expensive day in, day out. Someone needs to step up and help Kenyans. Well, those are some of your views. Keep them coming on our Facebook page, that is KBC Channel 1 TV, and at KBC Channel 1 on Twitter. So, O'Brien, back to you for the discussion.
Very good indeed.
Yes.
And I mean, you talked about the debate is raging here as to the cost of electricity. I mean, and the professor is throwing in some very interesting or what I would call some bewildering, if I may, allegations that you're saying electricity is more expensive in Kilimani, where you live, compared to, you say, Mukuru kwa Jenga, where he lives. Yes. Is that what you think?
Electricity tariff depends on locality.
Is it true, George?
It's not true. And in fact, I've had some guys who do not want to move from one place to upgrade to some other estates because they believe they are going to pay high electricity power.
Is that a reason for somebody not to move to a
yes, because
to a better estate?
If you move to Lavington, mostly you'll pay more, and you'll pay more in Kilimani. And I also told you before, I have a friend now. This is not supposed to be put off here, but I have a friend who told me that he runs 2 houses. Whatever they are, whether legitimate houses, me, I don't know, but he runs 2 houses. One house in Lavington, one house in Kawangware. And he believes that the one in Kawangware, he pays cheaper per unit in Kawangware than the one house in Kimani.
Is there any element of truth in his statement here? Does it matter whether you're in Muthaiga or Babadogo? I mean, is the cost of electricity the same
it doesn't
throughout
matter.
the country?
It doesn't matter whether you're in Muthaiga or Babadogo. I think probably what his friend didn't tell him is that the other household that's not in Lavington, probably there's only one resident who's normally not in the house. Therefore, they consume, on average, perhaps even less than 30 units because they only come in, switch on the light.
Pays less than Lavington.
That's what I'm telling you. If the one household consumes below 30 units, they're generally considered lifeline, and therefore their price will be lower per unit. So, and if the other household, which probably is the main household, which has children, has a fridge, has a house help, there's someone in the house every single time, and there's something running on electricity, most likely they're consuming much more than 30 units, maybe 100 units, maybe more. And as you've seen in the tariff bands, then that means that they get charged different costs. So the charge, what you are charged is actually based on how much you consume per month. And by the current mechanism of calculating, they basically look at your consumption over a 3-month period to put you in a basket, lifeline or above 30 or above 100. So if in 3 months you consistently consume below 30 kilowatt hours, the next time you're buying a unit in month 4, then you'll be buying them as though you're a lifeline. But if it happens that in month 4 you consume 100, month 5 you consume 100, month 6 you consume 100, then month 7 you're shifted.
Automatically.
You're no longer lifeline.
And it's also good to point out that for anybody who is in, you called it what, the grade 2, not the lifeline.
Yeah, just above, yeah.
For you to migrate, I mean, you must be doing well. Yes, you know, financially and also socially in life.
Brian,
because
if I can
you must have a number of you must have a number of items in your house. Like you must have a fridge in your house. Yeah, there is no way you're going to buy fridge without knowing what you're going to put in the fridge. You must also have a washing machine.
It could.
Microwave.
A microwave.
Iron box.
A big maybe television set. An iron box. And so this is a person who will be classified in Kenya as a middle class.
Exactly.
Is it true?
And the problem is that this middle class had been lumped together with the vulnerable. So it's about 1.5 million customers, the ones between 31 and 100. And as I said, about 6.5 million below 30. And I think, as you also mentioned, the total customer base is like 8 million. So you can imagine this 1.5 million that are more or less middle class were being subsidized, while in truth, they are considered able to pay. And that's why now the lifeline band was moved from 100 to 30. And within 30, it is assumed that most Kenyan households that are of the, I would say, low income type would be able to meet all their electricity needs within 30 units.
I want to hear this from Misheni, and I know you're in this category. I mean, I know you have cable TV in your house. I know you have fridge. I know you buy, you're subscribed to the monthly calling rates, whereby maybe you spend, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 shillings. I do not know. Then I know occasionally you go to these high-end cafes, you know, for a cup of coffee, which will set you back about 250 shillings, you know, for a cup of coffee. I know, Professor, you do the same. Then should you be complaining really about the cost of electricity in this country, if you can afford all these?
Okay, O'Brien, thank you. But I wanted to clarify something, not clarify, but just to cite my source, which is Business Inside Africa, that Kenya is the 3rd highest in Africa, only after Rwanda and Cape Verde, and that is from a very credible source, which is Business Inside Africa. Now, coming to your question, whether the rise in tariffs is justified and whether we use much more in, you know, our other activities, I would like to say that some of us are post-paid people in Kenya Power, meaning when they bring in the costs, sometimes they're whimsical. They do not have a rationale where they peg those the costs to meaning the units that they give us, they probably don't even know, it's just whimsical. And also we're saying that when we compare to other nations in the region, in the continent, Kenya, the electricity costs are still very expensive, meaning we're not competitive when we're doing our manufacturing. We're not competitive when we are, you know, in the manufacturing sector, in the factory sector. And also we're saying that...
Are you trying to say that Kenya has the highest electricity rate in the region?
Yes, regionally in the East Africa region and also continentally, Africa, Kenya is the third highest. Meaning even though you're saying that, you know, the electricity costs could be...
Hold on there, Judge, is there any element of truth in her?
There's an element of truth, but it's just not, she's not qualifying why. You know, they think there's something, and they're both economists. There's something called cost reflectivity. So a tariff must reflect the cost of production. And in Kenya, of all these countries in Africa, we are amongst the few that are actually doing a cost reflective tariff. Most of the countries they compare with, that means you put your generation costs, you put all the costs that come with producing and delivering electricity to your house, then you charge the customer that cost. But like for Ethiopia, a common comparison, there you have a serious subsidy program. For Egypt, same story, subsidy program that they are trying to lift at the moment. For South Africa, very serious subsidy program that has really messed them. At the moment, actually, South Africans are really suffering because there's not enough generation. So cost reflectivity ensures that a market, an electricity market, can attract investments, can attract those investments in new power plants, in new transmission lines, so that we can actually be able to pay for all the investments we put on the grid to get power to you. And so the option is you pass the cost in a reflective way, or you subsidize. And if you subsidize, then you're taking away money from other parts of the economy, healthcare, education, etc.
Judge, so let me ask this an intelligent question, if I may, and I want the input of you. If you go to some of the developed countries, and let me, for example, cite the case of the US. They don't sell to you a mobile phone or a cell phone. They'll give you a gadget, and then they'll tell you at the end of every month, as varies on, okay, you must be spending airtime worth 3,000 shillings, 4,000 shillings. The whole point is the cost of selling you a phone is just a one-off. But if we can give you a phone, we'll facilitate you to make phone calls, and so at the end of the day, we'll be having, you know, recurrent income through you, through the use of calling cards and so much. Is it possible to utilize or to use the same mechanism whereby you offer free power to people and then you incentivize them to use more power for economic activities?
Well, I mean, it's possible, but again, this is a political decision. This is not an economic decision. So there has to be a cost to generating or even distributing and retailing that power to you. So how you in your suggested approach, how you then handle those costs, then is where the decision needs to be made. And it's political. You can decide that the state will take over all that cost and somehow recover it through the way the economy expands and the way people use electricity. Or in our case, for Kenya, the state is not alone able to do all these generation projects, transmission
private
projects.
Producers.
So you must then crowd in some private sector investments to support the state and allow the state also some legroom to do other things that are more socially important. So the thing is, I think whether you're talking of it from hierarchy of needs or whatever, food, shelter, clothing, those are the things that are most important. Then below that,
is there a workable solution?
No, first of all, it's important to first of all tell Kenyans whether do you feel comfortable that a half of your cost of fuel is going into just some levies, incentivizing the water resources, incentivizing, let's say, fuel in. I mean, what he's trying to say is that we are doing that cost reflective to make it attractive for some people to set up something, then peg their money into your cost of power. Some will come with something and say, now because I'm offering this service, let me also be part of the food chain. As they become part of the food chain, your cost is going up. So is this the best way to look at it in terms of cost effective? It makes the sector investors attractive, but does not really spark productivity and industrialization the way it is meant to say. I believe that also the model you are talking about has worked somewhere. I even saw it in Spain, the gas company, where even the house I was living in, I was studying in Spain, there was never connected electricity. They used to gas. Gas was the one powering, the bulb powering everything else. They said gas natural gas. In fact, Nigeria has got the best natural gas that you can just flame and use. It's very efficient, can also be used for industrialization. So they have used other options which are cheaper, and that's what they incentivize you to use more, and therefore you consume. But also, something I also want to tell Kenyans that you realize from what we've learned from what you counted here, O'Brien, that we pay for our habits. Like if you have a microwave, why do you microwave things? Why don't you guys prepare food at 7 and every family member, if available, you eat and you go to bed? Why is someone still microwaving?
That's been the whole essence of buying a microwave.
But I'm trying to say that it's the luxury of the rich person. You know, because Kenyans have said, can someone help? Cost of power is going up.
I think what you're suggesting here are cost-cutting measures that you can employ.
Which we need.
If you feel you
can avoid
the cost is high.
Yes. Yeah. Why should someone be coming for dinner every day late to microwave food? Why should someone be warming food all the time?
What if I don't have a problem with that?
No, but you see, you're going to pay for the cost. You're paying for your behavior and for habits. And I'm trying to say, by reducing a bit of some habits which are finishing you, somebody, like I was also trying to say now, when COVID hit, all our employers said work from home. They never paid for us power. And now I discover that our power went up because the employer told us work from home. And they never gave us tokens for power. And because now you are sitting at home working there, your computer throughout the day, this guy raises your consumption, all of a sudden, your cost of power goes up. So I'm sure so many Kenyans need to have a conversation with their employer that if you're trying to work from home, please pay some tokens, not just, not just data.
But of course, it's also good to remember that you're not paying for bus fare to work, eh? So that cost offsets.
Oh, Brad, you can argue about that.
Whitney, you wanted to say something.
Well, I just wanted to buttress and also Prof's point where he says the household economy has been affected, but also we have to look at the commercial sector, which include the micro, small and medium-term enterprises, and also the bigger sectors, which are the factories and the industries. I think raising the cost of power is a disincentive for local investors and also foreign direct investors who want to set up, companies in Kenya. Because if you're paying 50% of taxes, of the cost of power in taxes, and you can go to other jurisdictions which have lower taxation regimes, I think it puts Kenya at a back foot where there's no way we can be competitive regionally or globally. And Kenya is a regional hub. It's a regional power, and also it wants to be a manufacturing hub, meaning I do not see in any way how this increase in the cost of power is going to help any sector of the economy, be it household, be it the commercial sector, be it industrialization. And we're also talking about the high cost of unemployment among the youth, among also the elderly. We saw yesterday some good number of 80,000, I believe, want to join the labor force. We say if the cost of electricity is high, where the companies will probably even have to retrench people, where will we get employment? And the companies probably will close shop, or they'll be forced to retrench. Meaning, I do believe the ripple effect is way across all. It's a lot, and it's also cuts across all sectors in the country. And also, I would like to bring in the conversation of independent power producers who help the government in generating power. I do believe that we've been seeing, when we do a comparative analysis to KenGen, we do know some of the independent power producers use thermal, some use solar, some use wind, but I do believe those contracts are very opaque, meaning we do not know what we are paying for, and those prices, as we have seen, they're extremely expensive. President William Ruto had said that when he gets into office, he would negotiate with the independent power producers. I do believe some are being summoned in parliament right now, some of the independent power producers. I would like to see the outcome of that, because I would like to say it categorically that the independent power producers, those contracts first must be transparent and they must be renegotiated, because the cost of electricity in Kenya is unbearable.
And also the question then comes, how do you reopen a negotiated contract, without attracting fines and legal costs? I mean,
and O'Brien, just something to add up, which was coming from her, but also Ms. Michelle needs to know this about the fact that when you pay higher, you have reliability. When you pay low, there is no reliability. And in fact,
you want to respond?
So I do believe there's power rationing in Kenya as we speak. There's, of course, we go for like.
Always ask yourself why.
There's power rationing. Meaning, is it reliable? No, it's not reliable. It's very erratic, and there's no way we can say because of the high cost,
countries
it's reliable.
Have cheaper power. You discover they are paying
South Africa
cheaper.
has one of the cheapest.
I'm actually talking about regionally. I'm talking about regionally.
They have serious load shedding.
Yes.
I mean, Whitney, I don't think we have any official power rationing in Kenya.
There is.
There are challenges. There are challenges. Different places in the grid.
Okay, from where I come from.
You need to move.
Just come to Lavington. Let me finish my point by the way. If you go to, for example, developed countries like France and the rest, you may find that the card they use per trip on a train, subway, or the tram is very expensive. Yeah. For example, they can pay €2 50 cents for one trip.
I wish you said this.
That's like a matatu. You're paying 250 shillings in one trip for a matatu. You understand? But sometimes that matatu, that tram or train or subway can go without people. Sometimes it's fully packed. Sometimes it's half packed. Sometimes it's nearly empty. The reason is that it is reliable on time. They don't wait for people. They wait for time.
Yeah.
But a matatu, it has to wait for people. It has to wait for people, and therefore it's cheap. So you can pay 50 shillings to go to Lavington from town, but you have to wait for people.
I'm sure you've never heard of cheap is expensive.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say.
There's somebody who made a very interesting comment here, and they're saying the cost of no electricity is more expensive than expensive electricity.
Please allow me to respond.
You want to respond
to that and also to our comments?
Do you want to listen to
so first,
George?
What I think is a gentleman or lady who said that what they're saying is very, very right. And I mean, in this country, if you remember late 90s, early 2000s, when we had this, rolling blackouts, where you're in the Gazette, you had to check if your estate will have power for 8 hours or for 12 hours blackouts. And that the cost of not having that electricity supply is way higher than any kind of cost you'd pay for electricity. Really, manufacturing suffers. They shut down. What she was talking about actually happens when you don't have that power. But coming back to her comments on IPPs and Kengen and contracts and opaqueness and all that, I mean, first, as an economist, I would consistently expect that you ask why. So first, how does Kengen finance their projects? Their projects are, and you can check this from their annual report on their website. You download it, you'll see that their cost of capital, on weighted average cost of capital is like maybe 3%. And that compared to a private company that gets capital at 7%. Their power plants, the number of power plants that they have, I think about 34. And on average, their ages is like 33. The age of a power plant is important because that's a period over which you're allowed to recover your cost of actually building that power plant. And many other reasons, like licensing, easier licensing process compared to a private party. Private parties will take 8 years to get a license. Kengen takes 3 years. So all that actually implies Kengen ends up with a lower cost. But if you want to compare, I mean, the facts are there. You can go and check. If you want to properly compare, take a Kengen plant that is built maybe less than 20 years from today, and compare it to an IPP that is less than 20 years from today. So like for like, and it has to be, if it's geothermal, you compare with geothermal. Solar and solar, because even the technologies vary with cost. So the cost varies with technology, sorry. And these things are what we should actually put a focus on, because I know the comparison you're probably referring to is that KenGen produces at 6 and the IPPs produce at, I don't know, whatever number you saw for a specific plant. And again, there's another explanation to that there's something called a capacity charge. And it's paid to KenGen, it's paid to IPPs, it's paid to any plant that's geothermal, that's hydro, geothermal, hydro, not wind and solar.
But George, even, you know, as you try to make that point across,
yes.
Do you believe that some of these independent power production agreements, they can be renegotiated better, at a better rate?
No, I don't believe in that.
Because
let me
I want to take you back to the year 2021. No, just a minute.
Let me explain.
You're going to explain this. I want to take you back. I want to take you back to 2021 when the former president Uhuru Kenyatta formed the presidential task force on review of power purchase agreement.
Yes,
that was in 2021. Yes. And one of their verdicts in their report, they said this: corruption in Kenya's electricity sector remains a distinct challenge. They talked about corruption there. So, which means, from their research, and they had broad, conversations with all the players in the industry, and they highlighted this fact. Don't you think if we were to deal with this element of corruption, inefficiency within the system, then we are likely to see lower tariffs?
No, I mean, when you talk of the system, you have to again come back to the entire cost, the cost that lands at the consumer's desk. So there's the part that is generation cost, which we can reduce through competitive tendering, through more openness in terms of how we procure the power plants. But in terms of any legacy plant, there's something called investor risk. Whenever you break into a contract, then you introduce a certain risk and a cost. And those contracts actually have associated costs for breaking them, which will be loaded onto the cost of power. So I think the task force itself, the presidential task force, they did the investigations, they came up with a report, they had recommendations, and there were many. It's not just the one that you've quoted.
There were a number of them.
And again, remember, this is a country where corruption is an endemic problem, not just in the power sector, across the board.
It is everywhere.
So there are some factual good recommendations in that report. There are others which I may tell you that there were accusations that people were never given a chance to even respond to. And they can be easily explained. Some of these things can be explained. So the Senate process that is currently ongoing is answering your question around availability of contracts and all that. It's not the first time. This is the second time. The National Assembly did it, I think, 2 years ago. The contracts were provided to the National Assembly. The contracts today are also being, my members actually providing these contracts to the Senate. They can review, and let me tell you, the power market by the regulator, it's regulated in such a way that you produce your financial models, take them to the regulator will review, approve a tariff for you. That goes then to the state law office, it goes to the treasury. So all these offices have already looked at those contracts before KPLC has a go-ahead.
George, when I look at the time, I can see time is really well spent. Yes. And at the end of it all, we have to come to the end of this. But before we get to the end of this conversation, I want also to hear from us. You see, when you look at wastage, within the system, Kenya Power reports about 23% system losses, which means that 23% of all the power that is bought by Kenya Power and Lightning Company, they do not know where it goes. They cannot account for it. And the most unfortunate thing is that these costs of this power that is not known where it goes, it passed on to the consumer. Globally, the agreeable system wastage is about 10%. How can we deal with this?
quickly, the regulator, if you again look at the tariff document that they released, there's a page there that actually has some measures for like the amount of disturbances you get, how many times you get blackouts, how long it takes to restore you, and also there's a measure there's a target set for KPLC. In this, I think next 3 years, it's between, they're supposed to reduce the losses from 23% to about 16%. And again, there are targets. This is a regulated environment, so it's just the regulator to really ensure that we put an emphasis on KPLC actually getting more efficient at how they deliver power to consumers. Yeah, but of course there's the element of theft, and I think we have to also address that. A lot of Kenyans are connected to power directly, no meter, stealing power, and that also contributes to that loss number that you're talking about.
Very good. In 30 seconds, each one of you, I'm going to give you, I want you to scorecard or to rate, number 1, the power reliability, number 2, the cost of power, and number 3, the customer service by Kenya Power. And I'll start with Whitney.
When we speak about the reliability of power, I would like to say, in my view, there's still power rationing in the country, meaning I would give it at 3. But the good part is that they communicate the places where they're going to be blackouts. Secondly, on the cost of power, I would give it a 1. I do believe that Kenya is very, 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 very expensive in its power costs, making us very...
So this is 1 out of 5?
1 out of 5, making us extremely uncompetitive and not making the economy any better by employment, and also bringing in foreign direct investment. And also your third question, the responsiveness. The responsiveness, I do believe they're pretty good in responding to the customer queries. I'd give them a 4.
You give them a 4?
Yeah.
Out of 5. Prof?
On reliability, you can only measure reliability on relative reliability. In comparison to any part of Africa I would like to be, I would be able to give these people 4.
4?
Yes.
Give Kenya Power 4?
Yes, even if you want to develop, you want to put up anything that relies on power, you'll want to put it in Kenya. If you go to cost of power, this way I'll give them a 1.
1
there, because I believe that no one in Kenya pays Kenya Power smiling. If there's anybody who pays Kenya Power smiling...
Did you copy from Whitney?
No, we just have the same sentiment.
Okay. No one pays Kenya Power bill smiling, and I've told you that because I live in that part where they charge us a little bit higher, I'm talking about relatively where I live, they'll get a 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5. On customer service, today I had a conversation by saying that if you live in an area where there's Mheshimiwa, when transformer falls because of rainfall, they come back faster. So again, it will depend on locality. If your transformer breaks up in Kibera, I think they look at you much later. But if it breaks up in where Mheshimiwa stays, for example, my brother here, they'll come quickly. So here, I also even believe
these are the swanky suburbs, yes, where you live actually.
Yes, there's some bias. So here, I think I'll give them 3 because of bias.
3 out of 5.
On customer service. They are selectives. Who are you to call Kenya Power? Can you threaten, even State House may not threaten Kenya Power when Kenya Power is misbehaving.
Very good.
George. Reliability 4.5.
Reliability.
Yes, 4.5. I think there's been a lot of improvements in terms of the network, in terms of the frequency of 4.5 out of 5. And within context of Africa, as Prof was also mentioning. Again, on cost, I would put them at 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the cost is high, but it's high because it's cost reflective.
But
and again, within the context, within the context of actually having the power, as opposed to people who countries where you'd give a 5, but then there's no supply. And the last one was
customer service.
On customer
Did
service,
they respond to your needs?
Yeah, there I would say 4.
4?
Yeah, 4. They have a call center you can call. You can approach them via Twitter. If you've I've tried. If you have a number, you like just talk to them on Twitter, and they They respond.
I think the
Customer
most
care is not
important,
bad.
I think the most important question of this conversation is, our food for thought should be, of what importance is Kenya's high cost of electricity when companies are relocating to our neighboring countries? Ethiopia, they're going to Tanzania, they're going to all other countries. No industry is setting up, and we've set up a lot of infrastructure in the last decade. Of what use is our
companies are setting up?
Be fair,
not,
like we've seen a very big dev key.
Moderna announcing that they are setting up
but there's a lot. I'm talking about leveraging the infrastructure. We have a lot of infrastructure.
But investors come and leave.
Yes.
Why are they leaving? They shouldn't leave.
For various reasons. Coming in.
They're not, but most are relocating. I can give you 5 good companies which have relocated in the last 2 years because of the taxes and the cost of power. Of what good use is our cost of electricity? If it's that high and companies are not setting up, we are not industrializing, we'll only remain an agrarian economy.
Oh, Brian, just 1 minute. It will be exactly 1 minute. If the president, William Ruto, uses what is in his manifesto on cost of power, tries it out, we might actually answer Whitney's concerns, because he has something that was brilliant, according to me.
Whitney, don't be worried.
Well,
one company will leave, 5 will come.
It's not from empirical evidence. That is not true. From empirical evidence, the last 2 years, like 6 companies, multinationals, which could have been employing the youth, which could have been remitting revenues, they've relocated to Ethiopia and Tanzania. We need to watch out for other countries, because Kenya is the anchor state of the East Africa community. If we fall, the rest of the countries fall.
Maybe we need to have another prayer. What do they call them?
National prayer breakfast.
Yeah, national prayer breakfast day, to pray for them to come back.
We need to lower our taxes and lower our cost of electricity.
This is not an issue that we are going to pray for as a nation. We are going to make deliberate efforts to ensure that we bring down the cost of power in this country, and of course we make it reliable and cost effective, because at the end of the day, we need manufacturers in this country. We need to use electricity without fearing so much about the cost consequences. I keep on telling you, you can't get this kind of stuff anywhere else, and you know this is true, right? Well, we've come to the end of the scorecard tonight. We want to take you to Marie Yambo, who is going to sample some of your views tonight. It's been an interesting conversation. We can always continue it from here. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Over to you, Marie Yambo, on the other side. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. And a lady, have yourself a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, O'Brien Kimani. Indeed, thank you to our guests also in the studio tonight. It's been a very interesting conversation, you know, from the locality where you're staying. Will that mean that you'll get power when you need it? You know, to Whitney also saying that, you know, the cost of electricity is too high. We're having our manufacturing industry being affected. So right from at a personal level, or the local Kenyan, or the local Mwananchi for that matter, to the multinational and the manufacturing industry, they're all feeling the pinch of the high cost of power in the country. And what we can only hope is that the government will do something about it. And just like our guest Ogola has said, if the Kenya Kwanza does actually implement its manifesto, maybe there could be a glimmer of light there. So just before I wind up, some of your views on Twitter. Mickey KE on Twitter at Mickey254 says, we hope that going forward things will turn around soon. Overmas Oremo, that is at Oremo_Brian. We are hoping the government will lower the cost of electricity soon. Who else has said something here? Overmas Oremo, I think I've mentioned that. Adams at Adams of KE, we need to talk about the heavy taxes on the cost of electricity. So those are some of your views. Thank you so much for tuning in and for giving us your feedback. We hope to see you again next week. My name is Maria, but till next time, it's goodbye for now.